So that's something that's very important, and they're both at that session. But with us here, we have Mrs. Terry Ann Thomas Gale, our Chief Education Officer in the Ministry of Education. We also will have Mrs. Latoya Harris Garrity, the Executive Director of National Education Trust. We are going to be having Mr. Damian Campbell, Country Director for the British Council. All members of staff who are here from different government ministries, departments, and agencies, and I do see CTD Joaquin Murray in the Office of the Prime Minister here with us this morning. We have some students from the University of Technology, as well as members of the Youth Advisory Council of Jamaica. And I have to acknowledge members of the media. Thank you for being here this morning. And all Jamaicans watching at home and abroad, good morning to you again. And so I'm going to start this morning with just a few updates, and I will talk a little bit about what happened in Cabinet. So this week, the last 2 weeks have really been graduation season. You'd remember we usually have our tertiary graduations in November, the big ones in November, but because of Hurricane Melissa, they had to be put off. And so we've seen graduations for UE and our teachers' colleges. We have UTech and CMU. And so I wanted to congratulate all those graduates. I wasn't able to do some of them, but I really had wanted to go to all of them because it's really a great time to celebrate. And in our ministry, the CEO would know a big chunk of our education budget goes to tertiary students, supporting them in getting their education. And so for us in the ministry, it's really a time to celebrate with their families. And we know for many of our young Jamaicans, it's very difficult to get a tertiary education. Their families struggle and sacrifice so much. And so this graduation season really is a time of celebration across the country for these young people. And we look forward to them taking their rightful place and doing everything they can to build this country. I also wanted to note that in relation to one big announcement that was made, it was in terms of the repair of the St. Elizabeth Infirmary. We are working really hard to look at our infrastructure that has been damaged as a result of Hurricane Melissa. And there are several infirmaries that have been damaged. The first one that we are being advised has been allocated funds for repair is the St. Elizabeth Infirmary, and that's a big deal. It is $270 million to repair the infirmary, and there's lots of damage to that infirmary, and so a lot of work will be done. Minister Mackenzie has noted that he is coordinating these efforts with several agencies, including the Municipal Corporation, NSWMA, SDC, and the Poor Relief Department. And so we're really looking forward to that. And the other infirmaries that need to be repaired, the total cost is $1.2 billion. That's a lot of money, but it's very important that we do that. In terms of cabinet notes, I'm going to give you some cabinet notes from the last two cabinet meetings that would have been held, which should have been this Monday, which was the 26th, and last week, Monday, the 19th. In cabinet, we spent quite a bit of time discussing the shelter recovery program and the details around that, which would have been launched by the Prime Minister. There was an indication that the first payments under the shelter recovery program to those affected would take place by the last week in January. This is the last week in January, and I confirmed with the minister this morning, Minister Charles, that we are on track to make first payments this week. And so I have to congratulate the Ministry of Labor. When we say we're going to do something in this administration, we do it. We also spent some time in cabinet looking at repairs. There's so many people whose homes have been damaged, and we do have some teams, some external teams, as you know, and I have reported here. We have teams from Ghana and Guyana, and we have other indicators of foreign governments willing to support us, and so that work is taking place as we speak. In addition to that, we have a program under HEART, which is the Bridge program, where we're taking young people from in those areas that have seen the most damage and who are unemployed. We're taking them in, doing short programs with them in terms of construction and other attendant areas. And we will then have them work with the JDF soldiers and with those visiting teams, the engineering teams from around the world that are here. And so our young people will get great practice. They'll get the skills training that they need, and they'll get international exposure to international best practice. So this is really very good. So we're not just building back the homes, we're also using it as an opportunity for our young people to really feel like they're a part of this, and also giving them a chance to have a trade, because that's going to definitely set their lives on a different trajectory. And so time was spent going through that program. In addition to that, we would have spoken about modular homes that had been ordered. Those homes are expected in the country by the end of February. So you'd have heard of the NHT ones, and also some from the ministry responsible for housing. And so that those are in train, and those modular units are on their way. In Cabinet, we also approved several boards, and I know that I have Minister Wheatley here, and he had one of his big ones, which was the AI task force, which is being chaired by Chris Record, and he can tell you about that. But several other boards were approved over the last few weeks. We had the Procurement Review Board, Petrojam, Jamaica Railway Corporation, Airports Authority, Toll Authority, Port Security Corps Limited, Jamaica Special Economic Zone Authority, Jamaica National Agency for Accreditation, members of the Standards Council of the Bureau of Standards, National Compliance and Regulatory Authority, Town and Country Planning Corporation, Scientific Authority, National Natural Resources Conservation Authority, the National Council for Senior Citizens, and the National Insurance Fund. So a lot of work has gone into the boards, and I remind everybody watching that in order for a board to be approved at Cabinet, there are several things that have to happen. People think, you just pick some names of your friends and that's the board. No, it doesn't work like that. You actually have competency profiles that's done for every organization. And so if the organization needs engineers, it needs people in marketing, it needs people in finance, that is laid out for every single entity. And then the minister can only select individuals that are on the Ministry of Finance database. If they're not there, we cannot use them as a director of any of these boards. And then it gets reviewed by the Cabinet Office. Cabinet Office reviews it and sees if it matches back with the legislation that affected this organization. And I can tell you, sometimes when you send your thing in, you think it's great, Cabinet Office sends it back and says, under your act, there is one more person that needs to be appointed. And so it's actually a very robust process in terms of the appointment of boards, and that does take quite a bit of Cabinet time. We also spent time on the One Road Authority, because as you drive around Jamaica and you talk to Jamaicans, they'll say, oh my goodness, the roads are so bad. And so Cabinet has been discussing that. In Cabinet, we do talk about the issues that we hear our fellow Jamaicans speaking about and trying to work through policies around that. And Minister Morgan is here. He can tell you a bit more about the One Road Authority and the awesome work he is doing with the team to make that a reality, so we can move away from those orphan roads where we can know when someone drops cement on the road and damages the road, who is responsible and how we get recourse. So all of this that we've been saying for a long time, we are working to start addressing it. Over the last 2 weeks, we've also had several Cabinet meetings, including special meetings that we've had. We had a special meeting on January 21 for NARA, which was an out-of-the-ordinary meeting. And you know, NARA is the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority. And as I would have noted, it's initially been set up as a department of the Cabinet Office. That's not where it will reside. There will be legislation done to effect it as a statutory body, And so that legislation is being worked on. But in the interim, it is being set up under the Cabinet Office. And that's why you see that ad out for the head of NARA. And that person will work to build out the structure and to get those who are needed to support, but will do so under the Cabinet Office until the legislation is in place. And I see some of my students who are here. I go through these. I'll be going through these more regularly in terms of what we're discussing in Cabinet so that Jamaica gets a view of what a Cabinet meeting is like. And for our young people, Cabinet starts at 10 o'clock on a Monday. And last week, Monday, we finished at 8:30 p.m. And this week, we finished around 7:15-ish. So it's a long day of discussions. And this is where we discuss topics that are important to the people of Jamaica. And we have robust discussions there. And so this press briefing that we do is really an opportunity for Jamaicans to hear what's happening. And it's also an opportunity for the media to ask us about what's happening in terms of government policy. And so this morning is a special morning because at Cabinet last week, Monday, we did approve the tabling of amendments to a particular act that Minister Wheatley has purview over. And before something is done in Parliament, it has to come through Cabinet. So Minister Wheatley would have done that. But this morning, today, this week, is also STEAM Week. And so I think it's really quite good that you're here this week. It's National STEAM Education Week. And as government, you know, we focus on STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics as a focus in our education system. And that's why we have the British Council here with us today, because they are supporting us in terms of building out STEAM in our schools. And so STEAM is like infused in everything. I tell people, when you do RE at the primary level, religious education, they try to bring STEAM into it. Every single subject has STEAM embedded in it. And Minister Wheatley is the minister of STEAM to a large extent. So with science and technology, the first two fall under him quite deeply. And so I was so happy last week when I got to acknowledge you in the Senate, Minister Wheatley, for the work you did with the STEAM toys for children across the country. That's so important that we introduce STEAM from early. It's nice to get a doll, but it's nicer to get a STEAM toy because what we're saying to our children, and especially our children in the rural areas and in those areas that have been damaged, yes, you've been through a lot, and play is going to be important to your recovery, but we also want you to play in a way that sets you up for the future. And that's why we were so grateful to Minister Wheatley for that initiative, because it teaches our children to play, but play more productively. And so this morning on National STEAM Education Week, I am pleased to invite our Minister with responsibility for science, technology, and special projects here at the Office of the Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Andrew Wheatley. Welcome, Minister.
Thank you very much, Minister Dana Dixon. I must start by commending you and your team at the Ministry of Education, for promoting STEAM. You guys are really forward-thinking, preparing the minds of our young people to participate in the ever-changing landscape that is before us. And I'm sure that under your leadership, that the young people that we will be putting out there in the world in the very near future, even now, that they will be able to compete and contribute from an innovative perspective what we have been cultivating in their minds. Good morning, everyone. On Tuesday of last week, the government tabled the Cybercrimes Amendment Act 2026 to modernize Jamaica's cybercrime laws for the reality we are living in. An economy and a society that increasingly depends on digital services, digital communication, and digital transactions. This bill is necessary because the threat landscape has changed dramatically, Jamaicans are being targeted by fraud and scams tied to online banking and financial transactions, identity theft, impersonation, harassment, and the non-consensual sharing of intimate images. This is often amplified through social media messaging, through the various messaging apps, whether it's TikTok, whether it's WhatsApp. And of course, we realize the impact of cross-border criminal networks in the whole process of sharing and fraud. We are also seeing the emergence of new risks linked to artificial intelligence, including deepfakes and synthetic media that can be used to deceive, extort, and ruin reputations. In fact, it has become the norm where you wake up in the morning and you will see what appears to be real truth in the news media. And when you do a little bit of deep dive, you realize it is pure propaganda. We have to ensure that we protect our citizens from these types of attacks. The amendments in this bill, the cybercrimes bill, strengthen protections for citizens, especially our children, by increasing penalties for offenses committed against minors. They modernize the law to address non-consensual publication of intimate images, including content that is captured, generated, or created, and they broaden the concept of publish to reflect how harmful content spreads online today. The bill also improves Jamaica's ability to disrupt organized cybercrime by targeting the tools and enabling infrastructure used to commit cyber offenses, and it strengthens the procedural safeguards and standards for search, seizure, and evidence handling to support effective investigation and prosecution. Some key aspects of the bill include, as I stated earlier, stronger protection for children. It increases penalties where certain offenses are committed against individuals under the age of 18, with the courts being able to impose up to 20 years imprisonment in applicable cases. We also modernizes the term intimate image protection. It creates and strengthens offenses for the non-consensual publication of intimate images, reflecting how content is shared online today. We also have looked and included the coverage for AI-generated harm. It defines intimate images to include content that is captured, generated, or created. In fact, you have seen a significant rise in the number of images being put out there that are AI-generated. Some of them, detailing some very explicit or intimate images of persons. Even though they are generated by AI, they give the impression that the person is actually involved in such an act. And also, what it does, it causes serious reputational damage to persons who are so exposed. We are also open to address risks such as deepfakes and synthetic media used for extortion or reputational harm. We have also, broadened the definition of publish. We expand publish to include sending, transferring, posting, disseminating, or otherwise providing access. So we are aligning the law with social media and the various messaging apps. Again, I stated earlier that the law provides clear protection for minors. In fact, it establishes that under this act, the amendment to this act, no person under the age of 18 can legally give consent for the purpose of intimate image publication. That is very important. Another critical aspect of the bill is that it seeks to disrupt the cybercrime sector by strengthening offenses relating to making available the distribution and possession of tools, data, devices, and keys designed or adapted primarily for committing cyber offenses. Again, we are supporting action against organized scam operations. We also recognize that we have to update the language to better reflect the importance of protecting nationally significant systems, including references to revenue and the broader health services. Another key component is accountability for premises used for cybercrime. It creates a clear offense where persons responsible for premises knowingly permit those premises to be used for cybercrime activities, and it comes with very serious penalties, imprisonment up to 15 years. We have also sought to improve investigative standards. It requires development and implementation of a code of standard procedures to guide search and seizure under the Act, supporting lawful, consistent evidence handling. We have also updated the Interception of Communication Act to ensure that the legislation so defines the terminologies that are consistent with this current amendment to the Cybercrimes Amendment Act, especially as relates to digital and electronic keys. Put simply, ladies and gentlemen, this bill is about protecting Jamaicans in a borderless digital world. It's about building trust in online spaces, strengthening deterrence, and ensuring that as Jamaican digitalizes, our law keep pace with modern technology and modern threats. This is a clear signal that Jamaica will not allow scammers, cyber criminals, and online predators to exploit our people, our system with impunity. We are raising the cost of cybercrime, disrupting the enablers, and strengthening the protections for citizens, especially our children, while supporting effective, lawful investigations and prosecutions in the process. As we expand digital government, grow e-commerce, and modernize financial services, Jamaicans must be able to participate confidently, knowing that the state is strengthening the legal framework to keep them safer online. This bill is part of the process of securing Jamaica's digital future. Safer spaces, stronger public confidence, and a more resilient economy. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Minister. And I'm sure that my wonderful UTech students are going to ask you some questions on this, because this is very important legislation. These amendments are big. And so students who are here, when we pass any new act, it doesn't just end there. You always have to amend it based on what's happening. And the Cybercrimes Act is one that we had passed. And then there was a review of it. There was actually a Joint Select Committee review of the act, and then you review it and you do amendments to it. And so this is the work that has been done, and I thank Minister Wheatley. I know that a lot of parents are happy at this, because we see what's happening, especially on social media, sharing of images and so on. And we also know that there are a lot of women who are very happy today, Minister Wheatley. We talk about, we use very nice language in the legislation, but, we know the phenomenon of revenge porn. We've seen it, heard it, witnessed it. And so it is very important, these amendments, and strengthening our framework and making it illegal to do many of these things, and also strengthening the penalties there. And so I want to thank you, Minister, and CTD Murray. I know you are working hard on this, and so I also congratulate you on getting it to this point. All right, up next, we have the man who every minister goes to about their roads. When their constituents call them, they call someone right after. And that's Minister Robert Nestor Morgan. And so this morning we're happy to have him here to tell you the awesome work that he is doing. He's one of those very, very hard-working ministers, and also quite sharp this morning, Minister. Please join me in welcoming Minister Nestor Morgan, Robert Nestor Morgan.
Thank you very much, Dr. Morris Dixon. It's always good to attend upon your platform at Post Cabinet to give updates to the nation as to the work that we're doing in the Ministry of Works. Today I will be, first I want to thank the viewers who are also watching and listening, as well as members of the media who are here. I see you have some UTech students, quite well uniformed, and also members of the government and the public service who are here to support us. Today I want to update the country on three important subject areas. One is the One Road Authority, the other one is Spark, and the other is the Go Road Patching Program. I want to start with the one that has been also on the minds of people a lot, other than the potholes, and it's the One Road Authority. And I just want to go through some information. At last week's cabinet meeting, cabinet would have approved the policy framework for the One Road Authority. And I'm here to update you on that decision, which is, in my mind, a major governance and delivery reform, and it's focused on one thing: improving our road outcomes and ensuring that we have consistent, clear, and accountable standards with a strong delivery discipline. I want to look at it in three ways this morning. What will ORA do, what it will not do, and the next steps, including the deliverables that Cabinet has mandated the ministry to bring forth. As a background, for years, Jamaicans have experienced uneven road quality, slow follow-through, and even when funds allocated for road repairs are done, many of our citizens may not be confident that those repairs have been done properly. One of the root causes of this situation is fragmentation. Many different entities manage roads across the island, and there are different standards across these varying entities. There are also different quality assurance practices and approaches, and in many cases, the public is left with one simple question: who is responsible for my road? When accountability is unclear, standards can be inconsistent, and you can get short-lived repairs, which ends up in repeated patching and poor value for money. That is the reason why the government is seeking to establish a One Road Authority. Cabinet would have approved the One Road Authority to be an executive agency under the portfolio of the Ministry of Works in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Infrastructure Development. The core mandate of the One Road Authority is to regulate standards and performance for all roads, but implement works on national main roads. Cabinet also approved the development of the Jamaica Road Designation Framework, as well as the Jamaica Road Register. And we're already in the process of creating the Jamaica Road Register website, where every Jamaican will have access to a list of all roads, the quality of the road, and who is responsible for your road. And ultimately, when will your road be repaired? And if it has been repaired, who repaired it, what was the value of the repair? And if you have complaints and questions, you can send it through the Jamaica Road Register. We're also going to implement the Jamaica Road Designation Framework, which will determine how roads are designated, whether they be main roads, farm roads, or parish council roads. Cabinet has directed that the ministry begin implementation immediately and should return within 90 days with recommended mechanisms and the necessary legislative and regulatory amendments, as well as to urgently begin consultations with stakeholders across a wide cross-section of interest groups, including parish councils, agricultural interests, community members, and civil society. In practical terms, ORA will do 4 things that we believe the country needs. 1, it will set and enforce a single standard for roadworks across the island, ensuring quality is consistent and roads are durable across the country. It will strengthen quality assurance and compliance monitoring so that contractors and executing entities are held accountable for road standard requirements. It will also introduce stronger performance reporting so that the public can see what is planned, what is delivered, and what standards are being met. And 4th, for national main roads, ORA will bring discipline in planning, procurement, contract management, and maintenance programming so that we move away from repeating emergency patching every year and have a structured national program for road maintenance and rehabilitation. The question you are asking, what changes does it mean for the public? The first one is clear responsibility and fewer runarounds when problems arise. No longer will anybody be able to come on Twitter and say, "Minister, fix my road in Portmore," when only 3 of the roads in Portmore are the National Works Agency's responsibility. And it doesn't mean that the people are wrong in wanting their roads to be fixed in Portmore. What it means is that people will be able to hold their elected officials who campaigned that they're going to do the work, but now are hiding when the work needs to be done. We'll have more consistent road quality because the same standards of quality will be applied across the island in the various categories of roads. This is about making road repair and maintenance more predictable and accountable instead of an ad hoc system that we have now. The question also is going to be asked, what is a Jamaica National Road Designation Criteria and a Jamaica Road Register? The Road Register is a key reform instrument, and it will be a public reference that clarifies road classification, responsibility, and designation details. We will try to make the designation extremely transparent, and ORA will assess roads against published criteria and provide technical advice to the public. Where appropriate, the Minister of Works may designate roads as a national road, guided by a criteria and technical assessment, and the road register will be updated. And this is not going to just be done by the minister getting up and say, Paddington Terrace needs to be a main road. We'll have to have consultation with our municipal corporations, the residents, and so on. And a good example of it is Ligani Avenue. Ligani Avenue is, for all intents and purposes, on paper, a parish council road. But in reality, based on objective criteria, Ligani Avenue cannot be fairly said to be a community road anymore. It is now a main road. It connects Hope Road to Barbican. It carries thousands of vehicles on a daily basis. It is so unfair for the little councillor who is in charge of that division to be responsible for the maintenance of Ligani Avenue when it no longer fits the criteria as a parish council road. When we fixed, and we're not finished fixing it yet, Ligani Avenue under Spark, it cost us over $70 million. No parish councillor is going to get $70 million to fix one road. And that's why the One Road Authority is important. And it brings me to the big elephant in the room. What of local government? I would have met with the Minister of Local Government last week, Wednesday, as part of the consultative process, and I assured him, and you would have heard him on the radio, the One Road Authority is not here to get rid of the road responsibility of local government. As a matter of fact, it would be irresponsible and foolhardy for one agency to seek to take control of every single road in Jamaica. Because there are indeed roads that are legitimately community roads that should continue to be the responsibility of the local authorities. As it relates to local roads, farm roads, and private roads, whether it be a housing scheme that is being built, what ORA will do is enforce standards of quality and accountability. So when a road is fixed by any entity that impacts on the public can be assured that that road is fixed to a particular quality. It will also impose responsibilities on members of the public. So we will enhance the consequences for persons who allow material to destroy our roads, whether it be the cement trucks, whether it be the car wash that allows soapy water to enter the road, whether it be people who carry stones on the road and don't strap them down and they drop on the road and create a risk to the public. With the update to the Main Roads Act and other consequent legislation, we're going to have significant penalties for persons who undermine or destroy our road infrastructure. How are we going to implement the One Road Authority? Cabinet has approved a two-way pathway. Phase 1, we have a 90-day deadline to set up an enabling framework within the Ministry of Economic Growth and Infrastructure Development to start operational design, outline legislative and regulatory changes that need to be made, and take a look at core instruments such as the designation criteria and the Jamaica National Road Register structure. And then we must go back to Cabinet to get approval for these mechanisms and approval for any legal amendments that will be required. Phase 2 will be 3 to 24 months. It will be including declaring initial national roads under the approved criteria, publishing the interim road register, and start harmonizing relevant legislation and maturing management systems, data and performance maintenance systems. I want to mention why a road designation criteria is important. As we evolve as a society, there are many changes that are taking place in our road infrastructure. I will give you the simple example. During Melissa, we were able to quickly move from Kingston to Lacovia. When we reached Lacovia, we could go no further, as Bamboo Avenue was destroyed and men had to be out there with cutlasses, saws, the JDF, the NWA citizens cutting through. It took them several days. So we do not have an emergency corridor to head to Westmoreland on the South Coast, which created its additional problems for relief. Even when we created a single lane after Melissa, we did that within a few days. We were confronted with another dilemma. The single lane was not sufficient to carry the bulk of people, whether it be police, whether it be relief agencies, whether it be family members who were anxious to bring supplies to their loved ones. So there was no traffic jam on the highways and the roads leading to Manchester. Where the traffic jam took place is the bottlenecks in the ground zero area, because there was no emergency corridor that the government and the state said, this is an emergency corridor and it should be of a particular standard, so that if there's a national disaster, we will have a clear path towards the disaster area. Who designates the roads to our hospitals, the roads to our ports? We had an issue last year where the ports asked, who is going to fix our road? They said, the parish council said it's not their road, but the road was never gazetted as a national road for the NWA. The Prime Minister, as the Minister of Work, has had to make a decision to say, we will fix the port roads. Why? Because the ports are an important part of the national economy. How can the roads to the ports not be under anyone's jurisdiction or control? And that is the kind of laissez-faire structure that we have had within our country for the past 60 years. And that's something that the government is very interested in fixing. So we're going to implement objective criteria to determine what a road is, why is it so, and how it will be treated going forward. So the objective of the One Road Authority, Minister Dixon, is to give rights to citizens who are taxpayers to have more control over their road infrastructure and more knowledge about their road infrastructure. There are some persons who are going to be saying, we do not want One Road Authority because it will take away some of our power. We are giving power to the people. The road designation framework, the National Road Registry, the consultations that are going to have to take place in the communities to hear the views of the public is going to inform a very robust piece of legislation that at the end of it, we believe Jamaicans will feel empowered, that they finally have some influence and knowledge, full knowledge of their roads and how their roads are going to be managed. So that's the One Road Authority. And the next matter that I want to mention is the 1.6 billion, well, it's now 1.7 billion road repair program called the GO program. So we would have announced the GO program last year in and around December, coming out of the devastating impact of Hurricane Melissa on our road infrastructure. We did say that a majority of these resources will be spent in the western parishes that were most devastated by Hurricane Melissa. But the reality of it is that all across the island, there is damage to roads across the island. So I just want to run through some of what we have been doing so far under the GO program. So for Clarendon, we'll be spending $206 million to repair main corridors. For example, 4 past the Guinea 3 Hazard Drive and Bustamante Highway. We'll also be doing Whitney Turn, 4 past the Freetown, the road leading to Porus, Salt River Road, and Rastaman Corner, including Portland Cottage, Maypen to Chapelton, Colonel's Ridge to Kellets, Spalding, Cave Valley, Pennants, Frankfield, Summerfield, and Trout Hall. And that's just Clarendon. For Kingston and St. Andrew, we'll be spending $300 million on road improvements in the city. Mannings Hill Road, Washington Boulevard, Duane Drive, Perkins Boulevard, Red Hills Road, Slipe Road, Elizabeth Avenue, Golden Spring to Stony Hill to Manor Park, Weymouth Drive, Arcadia, Shortwood, Olympic Way, Bay Farm, Seaward Drive, Walton Park Road, and also Stony Hill to Toms River, Long Lane, Old Stony Hill Road, Papine Square to Garden Town, John Golding Road, and so on. So in Kingston and St. Andrew is actually not 300 million, it's actually $500 million will be spent on the main roads. Almost every road, including a lot of parish council roads, will be repaired in Kingston and St. Andrew. Another major investment is St. James. We'll be spending $130 million to repair main corridors in St. James. And this is separate from the $100 million we'll be spending on Montpelier. So technically we'll be spending $230 million in the Republic of St. James. I'm sure the President of the Republic, Dr. Horace Chang, will be very happy. He's doing very well. And the roads, the Mobile Township, the entire Mobile Township will be repaired. Barnett Street, St. James Street, Howard Cook Boulevard, and also Anchovy to Shuttlewood and Reading to Anchovy will be repaired as well. We'll be spending $100 million, $107 million in Trelawney. And that includes Salt Marsh, Bengal Bridge, Falmouth, Duncans, Long Pond, Highgate, Stettin, Wire Fence, Warsop, Jacksontown. And I'm doing this because I want the public to be aware that yes, there are potholes on the road, but the solutions are coming. And some have already started. In another one of the challenged areas, we'll be spending about $100 million in Westmoreland. And this is separate from the work we're doing now to repair roads that were washed out by Melissa. This is main road patching. This is the work that we're doing in all the hills of Westmoreland is a separate program through the National Works Agency. So Goodens, Glasgow, Bartlett's River, Negril, Dunbar's River, Torrington, Scotts Cove, Chester Castle, Jacksgate, Ferris, Macfield, Torrington, Galloway are just some of the roads in Westmoreland. And I think we're going to be touching approximately 200 roads under this program by the end of March. And I can provide, it's unfair for me to provide a list of the roads to the public because the list is not comprehensive. There are many other roads that are not on the list that are going to be repaired. So the GO program has started. It actually started in December, but we had to pause it because most of the asphalt plants were not open and because of rain. Most of the contractors have either presented their insurance to the National Works Agency, which is a criteria under the procurement process, or they are in the process of getting their insurance. And we expect that most work will commence before the end of this month, which is in about 2 days. Is it 30 days of September, April, June, and November? All the rest. I have to say it all the time. 31 days of January. I learned it in basic school and it has never left me. Right. So most of them are going to submit their insurance by the end of this month. So persons can be assured that the GO program is on in earnest. I know the sensitive points. Long Hill is one of the sensitive points. I heard that there were protests in Forepath, Clarendon recently. That is one of the sensitive points that we're dealing with. Issues with porous. We see that as a very important corridor. The Negril corridor to Hanover. Well, Negril is on the border of Hanover, but the Savannah to Lucy corridor is very important as well. The last update I want to give you before our time runs out is a report on the Spark program. While we took a break during and after Melissa because the main contractor was mobilized to assist in the recovery and clearing, we have resumed work on the Spark program. So to give you an outline, we have instructed repairs to the main contractor on 258 roads. So there are 258 roads that we have given instructions to the contractor to begin work on over by now and March. Before September 3, we would have started work on 126, or given instructions for 126 roads. Since September 3, which is about 4 months ago, 3 to 4 months ago, would have given instruction on an additional amount, which will take us up to 258 roads. Work has actually commenced on 84 roads. So 84 roads are either finished or under active construction. Roads that have been paved as in the asphalt has been put on them, 56 roads have been paved. So across the island, there are 56 park roads which have been paved. Work scheduled to start before the end of this month for the next 2 days is 3. So we'll start 3 more roads before the end of this month. We're going to be starting 69 roads in February and 49 roads in March. So you can add that up. Why is it that not when I instruct a road to be started, it doesn't start immediately? So when you instruct a work to start on a spark road, that is the beginning of a process. And the first process is design. But design is not just design. Design means that the contractor has to go on the road, he has to do soil testing, he has to look at the topography and the hydrology of the road. Then he has to go back to the lab and get those results. Then he has to send them to the consultant to say, this is the quality of the soil, this is the type of environment. And then the consultant now has to design the road. Most of our roads in Jamaica were never designed in the first place. Most of them were community lanes where people lived in communities and the government said, well, there are a couple hundred people living there, we can't move them, so let's give them a road. So what Spark is doing is looking at these roads and saying, what best design can we implement on these roads to make them more efficient and more usable, including drainage, including the type of asphalt. So for example, in Moy Hall in St. James, the entire road is concrete because we realized that asphalting Moy Hall would have been pointless because based on the amount of water that runs off that hill, is a steep hill. Putting asphalt on it would not solve the problem. So the entire road, and I'm sure some of you saw the residents on TV saying that they don't want a skating rink. But we have since made repairs to it where we have made the road more rougher so that vehicles don't skid on it. So that's just an example that when you say start a spark road, it doesn't mean that we start digging up the road immediately. It means that we start the design. After the design, the contractor has to mobilize equipment and people. He has to consult with persons in the community for labor, which is at a shortage. We have a shortage of labor in many areas. So it does take some time. After the labor, then they start the excavation. And the average spark road takes between 2 to 3 months to complete. There are some that take longer. For example, Harbour Heights in East Kingston and Port Royal took us almost a year to complete because when we started it, we realized that there was a pipe there that needed to be replaced, which was asbestos. Then we realized that there are several houses on the hillside that were unstable, so we had to build retaining walls and so on. So the Spark standard is a significantly higher standard than other standards. So traditionally, we would spend $20 million per kilometer on a road. Under Spark, it is $40 to $45 million per kilometer for each road. So when you see a road being built under Spark, assume that it's not a patching road, it's not just digging it up and rolling some mall and then it's properly engineered. And that brings me to Ligani Avenue, which has been in conversation. Before the government accepts that a road is complete, it has to be approved by the consultant. So when the contractor is finished, when he says he's finished, that is not the end of the story. The consultant has to go, the asphalt expert has to go and test the asphalt. They have to look at the drainage. They have to look at the curb walls. And there have been occasions under Spark where the contractor has had to dig up an entire road and relay it because we were not satisfied with the quality of road that they have given us. So we are not satisfied with the quality of road that was given to us on Ligani Avenue. If you compare the road beside Ligani Avenue, which is a Spark Road, and Ligani Avenue, you see a difference. So the NWA has been mandated with the consultants to look at the road and say, what are the changes that need to be made to make Ligani Avenue to the standard? And that is why Spark is such a powerful program. not only does the contractor have to give us a good quality road when they're finished, but they still have a warranty period after they give us the road, about a year, where if anything happens to the road that can be said to be because of their acts or omission, they're obligated to repair it, right? After that, we know that if we get a good quality road, we have a good road for 10 years. So the government can then budget and say, in 10 years, these 200 roads will need to be redone. Gives the Minister Favour Williams, if she's still around at that time, a good opportunity to forward plan the budgetary process, and it makes spending government money more efficient. So by the end of March, we would have pretty much, when we instruct the other 143 roads in March, because we are going to give another instruction for 143 roads to be started, we would now be at 401 roads. So by the end of March, we would have instructed the contractor to start work on 401 roads. Now, I don't know if people are going to be fair to the government, but no government in the history of Jamaica has ever started 401 roads over this short period of time. Spark started, for all intents and purposes, in December of 2024. We are now about 1 year and 4 months since Spark started. 401 roads will be started within the 2 years. And those are not the only roads. By this summer, we'll be also starting the main road component, where we'll be fixing 63 main roads across the island, including Mullines Road and several other main roads in Kingston and in other parishes. So Spark is alive and well. We are enforcing the standards. We are not accepting compromised infrastructure works, and the public can be assured that we are being good stewards of their resources. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow, Minister, that was a very, very comprehensive update, and I thank you for your work. I know you're working hard. All right, I would like to note that he was supposed to come last week, and he told me he couldn't come because he had the said meeting with Minister Mackenzie last week, Wednesday. And so my comment was, you chose Minister Mackenzie over me. But that's all right. And I said it in front of Minister Mackenzie, so it wasn't secret. But it's really good to have you here. It is good to hear those updates. I think that Jamaica is going to play this over and over again. They're going to listen out for their roads. Mm-hmm. I know yesterday I had that issue. I was driving on a road and it was really bad. And my driver says, why can't we fix this road? And I said, it's not Minister Morgan's road. It's a parish council road. But anyway, you're doing fantastic work, Minister, and I think all of Jamaica will be very grateful for this. And I like that you acknowledge the work of Spark, where we had to break a little bit, but we're back on track with 401 roads that will be started by the end of March. That's phenomenal. And I love what you were saying about the One Road Authority and with the students. Here, I need you to listen to this. This is how we're professionalizing our country. We're taking it into a modern framework where there's accountability, where you have a database of the roads. You know whose road it is, so you know who to harass. And then there is a plan, maintenance plan. That's what Minister Morgan is doing. Minister Morgan, what you're doing on that One Road Authority is extremely transformative in the Jamaican context. And so I want to congratulate you. He did a big presentation at Cabinet, and I think we were all very impressed and very ready to go. And so I'm going to stop there and open up for questions. And we also have CTD, Joaquin Murray, who worked on the Cyber Crimes Act. So if anybody has any question in relation to that, you can ask, because CTD knows that inside out. And so we'll get answers there. All right, the microphone is coming around.
I don't think there are any questions for me.
No, I think you
I did
should
a
stay.
comprehensive presentation.
There are.
I have several questions for you. Good morning, everyone. Kelisha Williams here from Television Jamaica. So I actually have one question for Minister Wheatley. I'm not seeing him, but I will start with you, Mr. Morgan. So firstly, can you say how much money has been spent so far on the Spark and where the roads were damaged during the hurricane? How will funding for that be treated? That's one. And also, how do you respond to concerns that contractors are not being held accountable for shoddy work after we have a heavy period of heavy rain? We're back to square one. And also, do you vet these contractors to ensure that people who do shoddy work don't get back the same contract? And my other question is in regards to the penalties you mentioned for persons under the One Road Authority. How do you ensure that these people, for instance, cement truck drivers, they're held accountable? Because I think we have an issue with enforcement. We have the laws, yes, they are fancy, they're extensive, but how do you ensure that it's trickling down? People are actually being held accountable for the breaches. And I have one for, it was for Mr. Wheelie, but I guess the CTD can answer if possible. What is the government's position on what is happening on platforms now like X with the manipulation and production of explicit content involving children through tools, AI tools like Grok? I see at least 8 countries so far have said that they will be taking legal action against Grok. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've spent approximately $4 billion on Spark so far. Our budget for this year is actually about $5.2 billion. We're expecting to spend a little bit above that. And remember, Spark is a $45 billion program that runs about 2 years. I suspect we're going to probably go more than 2 years because of what happened to us under Melissa, which has delayed us a bit. So we've spent approximately $4 billion up to now, which is in the 1 year that Spark has been active. Holding contractors accountable. We're actually in the middle of working with the World Bank to create an enhanced accountability framework for contractors. I know that the Public Procurement Commission has also been doing some work on it. So as we move forward with the One Road Authority, a part of the accountability mechanism is ensuring that there is more accountability, not just for contractors, because a big part of the challenge we have is not just contractors. So part of the issue on Ligani Avenue is not just about what the China Harbour did. You have 2 construction sites that are operating on Ligani Avenue, which does have impact on the road. I'm not going to be specific to the impact for obvious reasons, but those are some of the challenges that we have. There are times when we make a road and another utility company might have to go on the road and impact the road. I can't blame the contractor for that, but the public doesn't care. The public is like, what happened to my road? You say that we're back to square one. We're not back to square one. I think sometimes we have very short memories. We had rains from July of 2020, June of 2025, to December of 2024, to December of 2024. We have had almost 8 months of consistent rainfall, which resulted in almost every single main road in Jamaica being impacted. I remember the road in front of La Shushan, where people almost protested. We milled and paved it, and it's still in good condition now. I remember the Washington Boulevard, which was dotted with a significant amount of potholes. Lindsay Crescent was almost undrivable in 2024. So when you say we need to remember where we're coming from, you know. So yes, some of the roads that we patched are not in a good condition for obvious reasons. For example, on Millsboro Avenue, we had serious water line problems on Millsboro Avenue, which resulted in the patchwork that we did on it being compromised. We've worked with the National Water Commission to fix that pipe on Millsboro Avenue, and we have repaired it again last week. So we don't expect that we'll have that challenges. So you have to be more expansive in the analysis that while contractors sometimes do not do what they're supposed to do, citizens have impacts on the road. I have seen where contractors lay fresh asphalt and somebody drives a truck on it. And the contractor has to dig it up to relay the asphalt, costing him millions of dollars. And these are some of the things that the One Road Authority will have to look at. The Main Roads Act was last, I think, amended in the 1980s, early 1980s. The fines, some of the fines are $10, $20. One of the things that we're going to be doing in the One Road Authority is we're going to do a comprehensive legislative reform of the fines and penalties. No longer will you be fined for not having lodging at your tavern for the man who comes on his carriage, or having a stable for a horse, which is actually in the law. The law. And those are some of the things we have to reform because our society has changed significantly. But there are also other pieces of legislation that impacts on the road. For example, the Road Traffic Act, which we have been using to deal with the emanations from cement trucks and so forth. I know of a case where the driver of a cement truck went to court and had to pay a large fine because the police caught him inadvertently, he would say, releasing cement on the road. So there are people who are being held accountable for what happens on the road. I suspect that those are answers your question.
In regards to roads that were repaired under Spark, that were damaged during the hurricane, can you say how many roads that
We've
were
had very minimal damage to Spark roads. I think there probably is about 2 or 3, one in St. Anne. And a part of the reason the road was damaged was the flooding could not have been contemplated or predicted in some cases. But almost 98% of our Spark roads stood up. Because one of the things we tried to do with the Spark program is build for resilience. And I'll just give you an example, which is not a Spark road, but the perimeter road. The drains on the perimeter road are significantly larger than the drains on the other highways. So if you compare the drains on the North-South Highway, which was built approximately more than 10 years ago, versus the drains on the perimeter roads, you see a significant difference in size and difference in robustness, which is what protected, even though the perimeter road was not asphalted. Of the 30 billion, 20 billion we have spent so far to build the road, we only got $70 million worth of damage, which is covered by insurance. And it just shows you how we are thinking about building our modern infrastructure to ensure that when we have these phenomenal events, we may not be able to build for a Category 5, but we may be able to build close to a Category 5. So that's my response.
Thank you. Just before you go to Mahiri, one last question. Can you provide an update on the St. Thomas Highway project, please?
So we will admit that we have had some challenges on the St. Thomas Highway project, particularly as a result of water line issues. But the contractor is obligated to ensure that whatever is handed over to the government is of a particular quality. So the government is not responsible for any repairs to any problem that is on the St. Thomas Highway, whether it be package A or B, because the contractor has a legal obligation to ensure that we get it. What has been happening over the last 3 months is that the contractor has been handing over sections of the road to the government. But even after the handover is done, the road is still under warranty for 2 years. So we have not taken control of a majority of the road yet. When the consultant says to us, this road is a good quality, you can take control of it, there's still a 2-year period where if a pipe breaks and destroys the road, if the road collapses, if the drain collapses, if the asphalt begins to lift, then the contractor is obligated to repair it free of cost. And we have put in these criteria or these clauses in the contracts because historically taxpayers have been left holding the bag when works are done and they are not done in a particular quality. So I understand persons are concerned that they might drive on the road and see flaws on it. Remember the last time we had a major issue on the road, the contractor had to dig up an entire section and relay aggregate and relay asphalt at no cost to the government. And that is the approach that we're taking. And as this approach becomes more mature in our procurement ecosystems, the market is going to respond to them where they're going to understand that it's better to just try to do it right the first time, because the government is going to say, well, you're going to have to dig that up, and we're not going to pay you to dig that up. That is your responsibility. But I think that our contractors have evolved significantly over the last several years, and a lot of them are demonstrating a kind of professionalism that we want in our road infrastructure development. I'm seeing less debris on the roads after patching. Remember a couple of years ago, people used to have to be calling the radio station saying how the contractors patched the road and left asphalt on the side of the road. I'm seeing less of that now, because I think the market is realizing that the policies that we're putting in place is geared towards the better functioning of the road infrastructure portfolio.
All right. Thank you, Minister. But there was one from that CTD Murray was supposed to answer in relation to AI and explicit images, including the concerns around Grok.
Morning, everyone. I'm not going to respond directly to the question in the context of AI. I think we might recall that we currently don't have AI legislation, but I can update that one of the things that the government has been doing is taking steps to develop policy around AI and, of course, related legislation. It will involve a review of all our legislation to determine whether they are fit for purpose as it relates to AI. But with respect to the specific question about the images that we're seeing, one of the things that we, particularly as it relates to children, one of the things that we need to bear in mind is that there are several pieces of legislation that deals with what you would call sexual images of children, whether that is the Child Pornography Act and, of course, the Cybercrimes Act, which still treats with malicious communication and obscene communication. So that's still one element that is contained in the legislation. And then with the amendments that were recently tabled, the minister referred to it as revenge porn, but intimate images. So to the extent that those images are images of children, then that piece of that particular section can be utilized to bring action against anyone who is responsible for publishing images as it relates to children. So I think with those pieces of legislation, albeit we do not have an AI legislation now, those can be utilized by persons who are victims. The important thing, however, is that persons actually have to come forward, because it's one thing for an offense to be committed against an individual, but if that individual actually does not make a complaint and report it to the police, then you can appreciate that there is little that can be done for that individual. So it is important. We know it's sensitive. It's really a very sensitive issue and matter, but we encourage victims to bring their matters, report their matters, so that action can be taken under the legislation.
All right, thank you very much, CTD. Mahiri?
Good morning, everyone. Mahiri Stewart, Nationwide News here. I have two questions for each minister.
Sure.
So I'll start with Minister Morgan, since he's already warmed up.
Minister Morgan, come on.
Okay, so first question would be, if Jamaica had a one road authority during the birth of Spark, how much more efficient do you think the carrying out of the program would be, and how efficient do you think it will be once the authority is established?
I think Spark is a kind of template to the One Road Authority. I think Spark has informed some of the best practices. So let's give an example. So every Spark road was essentially transferred to central government. So central government now owns the Spark roads. We may transfer them back to the parish councils after. We have to make that decision. The standards that are in Spark is a part of what has informed the standards that we plan to implement on the One Road Authority. Even the National Road Register has been informed by SPARC, where we have posted on the SPARC website. I mean, it needs to be updated. We've posted on the SPARC website every road that is being repaired by SPARC, which constituency it is, and so on and so forth. So instead of saying, how could SPARC be better with one road, our language is, SPARC is actually the precursor to One Road and has impacted positively the ideas around the One Road Authority. You had another question. What was it?
The second question would be, can you give an update on the bridge repair program going on in Jamaica as well as the Long Hill bypass?
So there are two bridge repair programs that are taking place. One is the normal bridge repair, which is out of the budget of the government. And that is basically Mahogany Vale, the one in St. Catherine, and the one in Trelawney, which is Troy. Troy is approximately 85% complete. I mean, the bridge is finished. What we're doing with Troy is the approaches. We have to do some river training, and you saw it in Melissa. The bridge was like an island in the middle of a river. Yeah. And we realized that the river training that we were planning to do for SPARC had to be expanded significantly based on the fact that the amount of water that comes down during storms in that river has increased significantly. The St. Catherine bridge near the Jamaica Boilers facility is about 50% complete. I received an update yesterday. They're actually doing the steel work to start pouring. They have already done the footers already, the abutments as well, but now they're going to be doing the top of it. We built a footbridge in both Troy and in Portland for the Mahogany Vale. Both footbridges stood up in Melissa, and we're now in the process of signing the contract for the works for the Mahogany Vale Bridge to start. So those are the three bridges under our general budgetary program. I suspect that the other program you're asking about is the Accelerated Bridge Program. We received concept approval from the PIMS process, Public Investment Management Secretariat. So they approved the concept. They say, yes, you can build these 50-odd bridges that you're planning to build is okay. Where we're going next is the project approval. So the Ministry of Economic Growth is actually in the field now, responding to some of the questions that the PIMS would have asked us. And we're going to be submitting within another month or so for us to finally get the approval to start bridge construction probably in the third quarter of this year.
Thank you, Minister. And my questions to Minister Morris Dixon. The first one would be, the Jamaicans for Justice did a study on ATI requests and the efficiency of public bodies in terms of responding to them properly. And the study shows that 70% of the bodies that a request was submitted to did not respond in the legal time frame that is put in place by the ATI Act. What's your initial reaction to that study?
Well, you know, the Access to Information Act is a very important act, and we prioritize giving information. And I know sometimes there have been delays, and I don't like the delays. I prefer when responses are given within the time frame. In some instances, I do know that individuals are seeking advice from, for example, the Attorney General. So the questions that may come may be of a type that they're not sure if that's information that can be disclosed. And so you'll find that they'll spend time going to the AG, getting legal advice on it in order to be able to respond. Now, my view on it is that you must always respond. If that is the case, if you feel that there is an issue in terms of the request, you note that you are seeking advice. You can answer some and not the others, but we must be responsive. And that's been the posture we have taken as an administration. The Access to Information process and the act we've already committed, and I follow in the lovely footsteps of Minister Morgan in relation to that in terms of updating it for a modern time. And so there have already been some consultations. I'll be doing consultations during the course of this year to improve the legislation, but also to improve the process. Because I know in many ministries, when I'm told that there may be a delay, and I do check with them, it's not anything nefarious. It is, I've been asked for this bit of information, I think it's privileged, or I think it's something that I shouldn't be disclosing, I just need to check. But the fact is that we want to speed up that process, and so we're going to be working with partners like you, because a lot of the questions do come from the media, in terms of how we can more seamlessly respond.
Thank you. And my final question would be, it was actually for Minister Wheatley, but seeing that you're the youth minister as well,
Sure.
I think you'd be in a position to answer. During his presentation, he did speak about the dangers of the cyberspace in terms of children that use it. And he was saying that some of the legislative amendments are to protect those children. We've seen in Australia where they did a complete social media ban for children under 16. And I believe France is also attempting to enact their own legislation for children under 15. Do you think that's something that would be worth implementing in Jamaica to keep children safe on not on social media, but just in general?
I think there are a range of things that we have to look at. I mean, I was watching quite keenly a case where a young lady is suing several social media entities because she felt that they caused her severe depression. And that's a case that I think the entire world is watching to see what happens. That comes out of that case. We know that there are dangers. I think the studies are very clear of the dangers of social media and addiction to social media. I've had therapists in Jamaica, psychologists and psychiatrists, reach out to me and say they are very concerned, not just about social media is one, but they're also concerned about phone use. And so they've been saying that a lot of the young people that they've been seeing, they are suffering from, for example, sleep deprivation, because they're up at night on the phone and not getting enough sleep. And that's affecting their performance at school. And so our psychologists are telling me and are raising the alarm that there's an issue fundamentally with our children and their use of technology. And so it's important for us in the ministry to work with our children in teaching them what safe habits look like. So it's also, not revealing certain things on social media, not sharing things, even if you're being extorted, how you treat with instances like that. And so we're teaching them safety online, but we also have to recognize that the quantum of time that is spent online is also having an impact. And so there are many things that you've pointed out. And when we in Cabinet looked at the Cyber Crimes Act and the amendments that were proposed by Minister Wheatley, we actually in Cabinet determined that we had to have a broader look at the questions you're asking. And so we are planning to, in short order, have a special Cabinet meeting where we look at those issues. And included in that, we'd look at issues around misinformation and disinformation, because we see a lot of that. I think the earlier question about Grok and its use and how you can manipulate images and manipulate videos, it's an important question. And so in Cabinet, we are seized of that, and we will be discussing that, and we expect to see legislative and regulatory changes coming in the future. But of course, we do all of that through consultations with individuals. But that question you raise about the safety of our children online has far-reaching implications, and that's where we're starting to do what we can through education, public education. But it also requires legislative and regulatory changes in the country. All right, we have one more.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Gerard Morrisini, representing Television Jamaica.
All right.
I have a question for you, Senator.
Sure.
There was an article in the Gleaner a couple of days ago, Corey Bennett, the coach, track and field coach of Heidel, accusing the Ministry of Education for not supporting them financially, supporting the school, that is, financially, to basically get their funding for their defense of their champs title in the girls this year. Why would Corey Bennett be accusing the Ministry of Education for lack of that support financially?
I'm not sure. And I do need to speak with him on that, because I have met with him in the past, and the school does have financial challenges, significant financial challenges. And as you know, elements of it are, it's a private institution, and there are elements of it that we're working in the ministry. We've actually considered completely taking over the institution. And so we are actually in dialogue around that. As you know, if the ministry is going to take over an institution, there are prior obligations, financial obligations that we don't necessarily take on. So those conversations have been taking place. And so I'm not sure what's the basis of his concern, because the ministry has been extremely kind in reaching out and supporting, even in terms of offering letters of support to creditors on their behalf. And so it's a much bigger issue. And so I think I just need to speak with him and figure out what his real concern is, because as far as I know, the ministry had been in dialogue with the school to try to help them.
And what are some of those concerns that you have about the finances of Hydel High?
No, I mean, as in many schools, many private schools do have financial challenges. There are many schools that we're treating with right now that have financial challenges, and they're in conversations with the ministry. Some have indicated they want to hand over to the ministry. Others, are asking for different considerations. And we meet with every school that is challenged, whether you're private or not. And so there are several schools we're meeting with, and they are one of them that we've been in dialogue with.
And what are some of the ideas that you have for their track and field program going forward?
They are one of our best programs. And so as a ministry, we endorse all of our track and field and other sports programs. It's not just track and field. Yes, we're known for track and field, but every single area of sports is very important. And also, if you look at our manifesto, one of the key areas for us was improving sports departments in our schools. And so we're actually actively working with the SDC, the Sports Development Commission, to deal with that and to improve the level of sports in our schools, and not just track and field, because we have some really good cricket programs across the country. Despite what's happening with West Indies cricket, do still have some good cricket programs. We have some emerging areas like, field hockey, which is doing quite well, and we have our basketball, we have our netball. So every area is actually quite important to us. And for schools that have traditionally been focused on sports, one of the things we're looking at is how do you support those schools? And especially, how do you support the schools that don't have the old boys or old girls that are giving significant amount of funds to their sporting programs? And it's a question that we in the ministry have to contend with, because you have some schools that get tremendous support from their alumni associations. But there are other schools that have children who are as talented, but they don't get the amount of support. And so with us, in terms of our programs, and what we're looking at with SDC is looking at how we can improve the programs across the board, and especially focused on those non-traditional sporting schools, because there's talent there and we need to unearth it there. Thank you. Any more TVJ? There are 2 TVJs here today. All right, on this side.
All right. Good morning, everyone.
All right.
I am Janelle Gordon, the President's Advisor of the UTEC Students Union Council.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have 2 questions. My first question is about the Cybercrime Act.
All right. So
the question is, how will the enforcement of the Cybercrime Act or the penalties thereof be applied to persons or offenders who operate outside of our borders?
Well, we're back to the issue of, first and foremost, there has to be a report. And I think we need to recall also that as it relates to where there is a victim in our country, and where the perpetrator is outside of the country, the legislation makes provision for you to actually bring a charge against that person. First of all, we have to find them. But there are also, outside of the Cybercrime Act, which speaks to jurisdiction, there's also the what we call mutual assistance legislation that will allow for law enforcement to actually engage other law enforcement entities in other countries to bring someone to book and to charge them and try them here.
Yeah.
Okay. My second question is to Minister Dixon.
Okay.
So I note the call for the integration of AI into the classrooms and for educators to reimagine the classrooms. But how will we gauge or ensure, or regulate rather, that the integration of AI does not affect our students' critical thinking? And is there or will there be a use of AI policy in higher education to ensure that it is ethically used and as well as it doesn't affect our students?
All right, you've asked some phenomenal questions, and that's why I like having you here. And I should note, UTech students like to come to post-cabinet press briefings. So UTech is obviously doing something correct. And I should tell all of Jamaica that the last time we had post-cab, the UTech students came to me with a position paper on a matter that I had been interested in, which was the migration of students after they leave university. And they've informed me that they have 2 other position papers that they're working on, and they needed the help of the legal students at UTech because they're coming to me. And so I have a meeting to do with them to discuss their recommendations to the minister. And that's what you really want of our young tertiary students, to feel so vested in their country that they're starting to work already to solve the questions. And so I want to salute you as you asked your question, but you asked a very broad-ranging question. And so when I started today, I spoke about the AI task force, and that was approved in cabinet last week. Now, that AI task force is going to look at AI policy, and as the CTD had mentioned, we don't have any AI legislation in Jamaica yet. But it is clear that we need some kind of legislation, and what the AI task force is doing is looking at that. And it's so funny that you had the 3 ministers that are around the AI task force. So the first idea of the AI task force started with Minister Morgan. And then he passed it on to me when I took over the portfolio, and I appointed a task force and received their first report. And then now you have Minister Wheatley that has reappointed them to do additional work on the policy and potential, helping us to think through what legislation is needed. And so we're on that journey. In terms of children and AI in schools, we were one of the first countries in the entire world, CEO, to have an AI policy in education. One of the first in the world. And in that policy, what we sought to do was to not be afraid of AI, to understand that it is here, it's going absolutely nowhere, and that we needed to incorporate it in our entire educational system, whether it's at the primary level or the tertiary level. So we have a policy. And it'd be good for your next project to review our policy and see if it's robust enough. But there are still concerns. I mean, all our children are using AI. I have that issue at home. Why go and sit down and do the essay when I can just ask ChatGPT to write it for me, right? And so that issue of critical thinking is key. And so what we have to do is to incorporate it in school and incorporate it in class, to be able to teach children how to discern what's real and what's not, and how you triangulate and get information from different sources and make sure that what you're getting from AI is actually correct, maybe using more than one AI source. And so that's a part of the learning and the teaching that we have to do in our context. So we're not saying to our young people, don't use AI. We want you to be experts at AI. We want you to be able to develop AI tools that will solve the problems in Jamaica and the world. But we want you to use it responsibly. And so a part of our programs in school will be looking at that, how you really use AI. And we're actually doing work in terms of training our teachers to use AI also, because AI is a great tool for teachers. We already have a program in the Ministry of Education where we can grade students' work using AI. And so we've rolled that out in our schools, and that lowers the burden. I remember when I was a teacher, the worst part of teaching was marking the papers. The lesson plans too. I didn't like the lesson plans either. And now the lesson plans, you can get those online. So the ministry is over time taking away some of that routine work that the teacher would do, giving it to AI and giving it to technology, and then freeing up time for the teacher to spend more time on actually engaging and teaching. And so your questions are correct, and we have a long way to go in Jamaica. AI is also changing over time, and the realities and the problems are emerging as we speak. And so we're going to have a robust framework in place, but also understand that that's going to have to change over time, like we've done with the Cybercrimes Act. Had the act, and then you have to update it as new realities come to the fore. All right, I think that was all the questions. Is there any more? Okay, there's one more here. And then we'll close after these questions.
Thank you. And my final question, just a follow-up to what was asked earlier, well, to what my last question to Minister Morgan. Can you say whether or not there will be any cost overrun for the St. Thomas Highway project based on what you explained, and also any proposed timeline for when the roadway will be handed over? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Just give me 10 seconds. Let me get my information.
Yes, you can have all the time you need.
All the time?
We're a very, very open administration. So we come here, you can ask us any question, and we'll answer it.
All right. So, as I said to you, as we are speaking now, handovers are taking place and will continue to take place over the next 2 months. What is happening is that the consultant is examining the road to analyze where, if the road is of a particular standard, for the government to take custody of the road. So that is the process that we're engaged in now. I think there are like 7 sections that are currently being examined, and we expect that by the end of March. Remember, however, though, that we have expanded the South Coast Highway Improvement Project to include the Port Antonio bypass, which was about $80 million US. So while we were expecting that the South Coast Highway Improvement Project would have ended this quarter, because we have added a new component to it, which is a variation on the original contract of $80 million, it will not be complete until probably 2027, 28. Now, I'm very careful about the term cost overruns because they can be misinterpreted. What has happened to SHIP is not a cost overrun, but a change of scope. So we have expanded the scope of the project to include the Port Antonio bypass, but we have not expanded the scope of the initial contract for Part A and Part B. So we finished the Williamsfield section, and that was within budget. And now we're finishing the Morant Bay to Portland section, which I have not heard of any significant cost changes there. But we've expanded the scope to include the Port Antonio bypass, which is over $80 million US. I hope that answers your. Thank you very much. Thanks,
all right.
Minister.
Thank you, Minister, and I think that's been a good post-cabinet press briefing, and we are going to close out today. As you heard, there's a lot happening in our cabinet meetings. When we do these sessions, I will again do the cabinet notes and be able to offer you insight into what's being discussed at cabinet. And so we still have to be thinking about our brothers and sisters in the West. Things are still not perfect. A lot of things have happened in terms of restoration of utilities and our schools being back in session, but there's still a lot more work to be done. And the rebuilding and rethinking of our communities in the West is continuing. And so the cabinet will be focused on the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority and the areas of focus there. And when the Prime Minister does speak, you're going to see the results of all that deliberation at Cabinet in terms of our reimagining of the West. And it's a beautiful picture that he will paint. And so until we meet again, as always, I say, may God bless this wonderful country, Jamaica land we love, and thank you for being here.